All right. I've come into possession of some letters regarding Schaeffer Cox, and I just wanted to read them in YouTube. He's been in there 5 years. A lot of us are just now learning about his name here in Texas and across the country. But up in Alaska, there's been a faithful band of friends that have carried the torch for Schaeffer Cox for 5 years. And this one is called Maria's Letter, POL Target SCH. I don't know if that stands for Police Target Schaeffer, or just guessing. Here's the letter. Today I delivered letters to the Alaska Congressional Delegate offices in Fairbanks, December 5th, 2013. Related character letters written on behalf of Schaeffer Cox to the Honorable Judge Robert Bryan for leniency in sentencing delivered to Alaska Congressional Delegation. Dear Member, Enclosed are the 22 of the 80 letters sent to Judge Robert Bryan in the fall of 2012 requesting leniency in sentencing Schaeffer Cox. I've recently been corresponding with Schaeffer and didn't realize that you had not been given these letters sooner. Schaeffer requested that I obtain copies of the letters and deliver them to you. At the sentencing, the judge said that the letters were not credible. I ask you to read the letters and decide whether members of the Fairbanks community deserve to be insulted by Judge Bryan in this way. Schaeffer is being held in the Communications Management Unit in Marion, Illinois, although the facility is no longer operates as a Supermax facility. USP Marion is now home to one of 2 communications management units in the federal prison system. The Federal Bureau of Prisons created the CMU in response to criticism that it had not been adequately monitoring the communications of prisoners. Most of the inmates are Arab Muslims convicted of terrorism-related charges. An ACLU lawsuit charges that CMUs of the federal prisons violate inmates' rights. In Schaeffer's case, the prisons aren't the only violation of his human rights. Schaeffer Cox is the intersection of what the Department of Homeland Security defined in 2009 as the next security threat. Schaeffer Cox was the president of Interior Right to Life, and he was the most vocal Second Amendment activist in Alaska. He was a strict constitutionalist, and therefore he opposed big government, was a homeschooled Christian, and rejected federal authority in favor of local authority. A 2009 DHS memo promoted the targeting of Americans based on their belief system and worldview. At the same time, the IRS was targeting Tea Party and conservative groups who applied for tax-exempt status. On April the 7th, 2009, Department of Homeland Security sent a 9-page warning memo to law enforcement offices across the country, titled Right-Wing Extremism, Current Economic and Political Climate, Fueling Resurgence in Radicalization and Recruitment. This report includes a sweeping definition of the threat. Right-wing extremism in the United States can be broadly divided into those groups, movements, and adherents that are primarily hate-oriented, based on hatred of particular religious, racial, or ethnic groups, and those that are mainly anti-government, rejecting federal authority in favor of state or local authority, or rejecting government authority entirely. It may include groups and individuals that are dedicated to a single issue, such as opposition to abortion or immigration. What and who exactly are President Obama's Homeland Security officials afraid of these days? If you are a member of an active conservative group that opposes abortion, favors strict immigration enforcement, lobbies to protect Second Amendment rights, protests big government, advocates federalism, or represents veterans who believe in any of the above, the answer is you. And then there's a link to Michelle Malkin. You might be a radicalized right-wing extremist. Schaeffer Cox was also an advocate of the sovereign citizens movement. At some point, the Southern Poverty Law Center began targeting members of this group in conjunction with the DHS. Schaeffer Cox is mentioned on the Wikipedia page during Sovereign Citizens Movement. The United States Federal Bureau of Investigation classifies sovereign citizen extremist among domestic terrorist threats. In 2010, the Southern Poverty Law Center estimated that approximately 100,000 Americans were hardcore sovereign believers, with another 200,000 just starting out by testing sovereign techniques for resisting everything from speeding tickets to drug charges. The Federal Bureau of Investigation sent informants to infiltrate the Alaska Republican Convention in 2008. They also targeted conservative groups in Fairbanks, including the Interior Alaska Conservative Coalition, IACC. Schaeffer and Marty Cox were founding board members of IACC and founded the Second Amendment Task Force as a member organization in the coalition. At a fundraiser for IACC, the 2010 FBI informant Bill Fulton came to Fairbanks under the auspices of helping out IACC. Instead of helping, Fulton met with conservatives in the evenings and tried to foment violence that would eventually be blamed on the Alaska Peacemaker Militia, and especially on its leader, Schaeffer Cox. Although the local paper portrayed them as dangerous extremists, the Alaska Peacemakers Militia had a credo: defend all, aggress none. The following press release was never published. It was written as an explanation for the APM withdrawing membership in the IACC in 2011 and shows the truly non-aggressive nature of the APM organization. If we are to be loved and accepted by the entire community, the Alaska Peacemakers Militia must hold fast to their guideline principle of defend all, aggress none. No human being has the right to force their will on another, regardless of the means used. The partisan politics of today too often spiral down into just that. The strong dominate the rest, and we're all okay with it as long as the acts of aggression follow the political process. This is wrong. It is wrong because the rights of the individual are being trampled on, and the rights of the individual outweigh the will of the majority. Natural law guards the individual against kings and voters. As a matter of conscience, we cannot try to control others, only defend ourselves and offer to help our neighbor as they do the same. If the Second Amendment Task Force is going to accept the Second Amendment in its entirety, it must be supportive of militias, and if it is supportive of militias, it must remain entirely defensive in nature. For a militia is an entity of force, and the only time the use of force is morally allowable is in order to stop an aggressor. This being true, it is proper for APM, Alaska Peacemakers Militia, and 2ATF to not allow them to be aligned with any organizations, individuals, parties, or coalitions that have ambitions of political power. For it is irreverent, lawless, and For it is the irreverent, lawless, and arbitrary use of political power by men who would be law rather than defend the law that has brought us to our present precarious condition. We must not compete for the privilege of aggressing others with the system. The FBI conducted raids on the homes of 5 APM members to collect evidence. In one case, they terrified the wife and children of one member who were at home when the raid was conducted. Once the evidence was collected, the state of Alaska had to drop all weapons charges against the members of APM because it was collected illegally. However, the federal government was able to prosecute using illegal evidence because it had given itself permission to do so under the Patriot Act. Schaeffer Cox and the Alaska Peacemakers were targeted and incarcerated for what they believe, and they believe what they were raised to believe: to be right, just, and good. Schaeffer Cox is a political prisoner. Justice demands that he be freed. Sincerely, Maria. Note, today happens to be the same day that Nelson Mandela died. That's a powerful letter by Maria.